Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for continuing to join us this evening as results come in. And if you haven't joined us previously, emerging that Governor Gina Raimondo with 56% of the vote, Matt Brown 34% with 82% of the precincts reporting, as well as Alan Fung taking a 50+ % lead over 40% to Pat Morgan. And now the lieutenant governor's race is too close to call. So perhaps this will be the one we talk about on air. But I'd like to welcome my next guest in, former Rhode Island Governor, U.S. Senator, Warwick Mayor, Lincoln Chafee. Thank you so much.
Good to be here, Kate.
Val Endres, often quoted in GoLocal, professor of communications at Rhode Island College. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So, as promised, wanted to bring you guys in when we really knew more. There is one race that still hangs in the balance, but Senator, talk with us a little bit. You were a big supporter of Matt Brown. Seemed like he was getting a lot of energy. The campaign was close, and as we talked with folks who've been in here, the Raimondo campaign certainly spent a lot of attention on Matt Brown and going very negative. Talk with us about now knowing that it looks like the governor is going to emerge and how Matt Brown ran the campaign.
Well, I was always concerned of the third candidate, Spencer Dickinson, being in the race. It's an uphill battle for an insurgent such as Matt Brown, but having that third candidate in the race just complicates it.
And we're hearing 10%.
10%, yes, may not be the margin, but it just confuses the voters. If they're not happy with the performance of Governor Raimondo, where do I go? And so I was always concerned about that. I did think that Matt had a chance because the last time we looked at a Democratic primary was 2016. And the insurgent there, Bernie Sanders, in the 2016 presidential primary, won every city and town in Rhode Island except Barrington and East Greenwich and Central Falls. Carried North Providence, carried Jamestown, carried Aquidneck Island, carried Warwick, Cranston, but that's not happening here. The so-called establishment candidate is winning tonight.
So, Val, you're a student and professor of campaigns and messaging. Let's talk a little bit about how the campaigns were run. And from the governor's side, clearly a lot of money spent on TV, that saturation. I was watching the news one night. Out of the 4 commercials, 2 were the governor's. You know, so much was spent in that bombardment. I mean, clearly it had some success. Do you think she ran a good campaign?
Well, I think she made a couple of risky moves, but in the end they paid off. And one of them was that she spent her money, she had the money to spend, and those are not directed at the progressives and the younger people because they're not watching television in the same way. So what happens is it's the group and the groups that vote the most. So you'll see, for example, seniors that watch television at a regular time and the news programs. And so that was one thing that she did. Another strategic decision she made was not to debate. And that hurt Matt Brown because it didn't give him a platform to make the connection with the progressives in the way that he really needed to. Regenberg had the endorsement, the very vocal endorsement of Bernie Sanders, and he did debate. And so people saw him. And it's not just the debate itself, but it really is the excitement and the media covering it and the buzz that happens with a debate, the winner and the loser. And so that probably was a key decision when she didn't give him a platform.
So one of the conversations that I've had with folks who've been in here in studio before is the election night parties that are so entrenched now. They're not all at that same location, and there's not that kumbaya that evening. They have the sort of party come together party a few days later after the elections. But you've spent time, you know Matt, and you know the Matt Brown supporters, Senator. What do you envision moving forward to the general with a lot of folks who had a lot of concern with the governor?
Well, now it's reversed. Now in the general election, there's going to be Joe Trillo. And so that's going to divide the Fung vote, just as what happened to Matt Brown with Spencer Dickinson, taking votes away from Matt's the way I see it. And probably Governor Raimondo is going to get reelected.
Do you see those Matt Brown voters turning out for the governor? Do you see them perhaps sitting at home, as Matt Gordino at Providence College said? The protest candidate this year is much different than back in 16. Bob Healy and Joe Trillo probably could not be any more different. But what do you see from an historical perspective? I mean, even just dating back to 16, as we were talking about, that really disappointed voter who was a kind of a true believer against the established candidate.
Young people have a tendency to stay home, and so they may have a reason to stay home. The other issue that we need to talk about is that this will be a repeat of 2014. And there was some fatigue on both sides with both of those candidates by the end. We conducted focus groups on the last debate, and the public was angry with both of them, and they were cynical about both of them. And here we are, starting with the same candidates again, adding Joe Trillo in instead of Healy. So it's going to be all about getting out the vote for this next election.
And of course, Bob Healy had that anti-government, that sort of usurper vibe, which is Joe Trillo is pretty lockstep with the Trump administration. You've been in Republican primaries before. Let's talk a little bit about Fung emerging over Patricia Morgan. She had a strong few last weeks putting together Ken Block and John Robitaille and Arlene Violet. Does it just come down to that numbers game in the GOP?
Yes, I think it's just we're in Rhode Island. We're flipping a little bit. We had the Sanders big win in 16, the establishment won in 14. Going back to 08, Hillary Clinton beat Obama in Rhode Island in the presidential primary, and now we're back to the establishment winning big with Fung and Raimondo tonight.
And so what do we have to say with that? I mean, I think folks were very curious. We saw some upstart wins by progressive Democrats in recent weeks. It seemed like there perhaps was sort of that progressive tide. And now, as you said, it's deja vu all over again as 14. Is that surprising?
No, I don't think so. I think we've had the front runners to begin with. Rhode Island voters are still in a funk. I have to say that, and not everybody has recovered from the recession. And we went from one of the leading industrialized states to having the recession hit us and not crawling out of it until one of the very last states. And if you look at that demographically, people who lost their jobs in factories still haven't regained their footing. So there's a lot of cynicism, there's a lot of anger about all of this. So I don't know that they caught fire in the same way, because they're still focused on home and the basic issues around the dinner table and jobs and how many jobs they have, sometimes 3 jobs, to earn a decent income.
Yeah, Val's right. President Trump outperformed Romney and McCain in Rhode Island. The past 2 Republican candidates for president in Rhode Island were Romney and then McCain 4 years earlier, and Trump outperformed both of them. So yeah, that the middle class that just hasn't felt that they've benefited from any kind of improvement in the economy is still there in Rhode Island, very strong. Surprisingly, Trump won a lot of towns in Rhode Island.
In New York, where we saw that insurgency, they have recovered in ways that we haven't.
So the progressives did better.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Senator, any regret sitting here not throwing your hat in the ring as you've been?
None. Had a very good summer.
But you had been, very critical of this Raimondo administration. As you said, it might be a very difficult uphill battle for Mayor Fung with Trillo in the race. But is there a path for him to victory?
Having this third candidate, I don't think it's going to be like Bob Healy. He's a Republican. He was my state rep. He was a Republican state rep in the State House for many, many years. He's a Republican, and he's running as an independent. That's just got to take votes from Mayor Fung.
And he's a place where the Trump supporters can go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I can't see with that third candidate in the race any path for Mayor Fung.
So as we stand here tonight, the race that I believe is yet to be decided is McKee and Ruggenberg. Did you think it was going to be this close?
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. That was shaping up as a heavyweight tilt, as they say.
And do you think, we've asked this question before, Dan McKee has made the point of Aaron's youth and his age. Should that really be a factor?
Well, I mean, one could argue in the lieutenant governor's position, you can learn in office. You don't have the same kind of duties that you have in other offices. So I think if they're looking for a fresh face, it makes sense to have it in the lieutenant governor. And plus, it's been a very vigorous campaign. Lots of interesting debates that have been going on. And quite frankly, I would argue it's the most interesting campaign that we've seen this season.
Well, there have been debates, yes.
Yes.
At 90% of the precincts reporting across the state, Dan McKee only leads by 1,500 votes, 50.8 to 49.2.
50.8 for Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee to 49.2 to challenger Aaron Ruggenberg, with now over 90% of precincts reporting, which just told was a difference of about 1,500 votes. Do we expect this to be decided this evening?
I don't think so.
And absentee ballots, of course.
Yeah,
Absent with
that's right.
chase and paper. This could be the one that we're staying up either later into the next couple of days to see what happens.
I won my first race for mayor 30 days after the election. Finally got certified, counted all the absentees and checked the machines, and it wasn't until 30 days later.
Well, if it goes to paper,
Can I give you a surprise number?
a surprise number.
Coming out of Providence, which is still only reporting, let me give you the...
We're getting some surprise numbers here. Hold 1 minute.
Providence is reporting 83% of the vote. Jorge Lourdes is only at 58%. And Kobe Dennis finishing in second place right now.
Oh my gosh.
With 24%
Wow.
of the vote.
Wow,
And
that's
Bob
a surprise.
DeRobio at 17.9%.
Wow.
Okay, getting in some numbers from Providence right now. Still, I believe 80% of precincts reporting. Mayor Jorge Lorza at 58%. Kobe Dennis, 24%. Bob DeRobio, 17%. Now, here's a name that I think you've both heard of before. Dee Dee Whitman is a known entity in political circles. She's entering the race as an independent, said that she's going to put $500,000 of her own money into the campaign. Probably watching these numbers very eagerly this evening. You're a former mayor. You know, what's it like if you emerge from a primary a little battered and bruised?
I wouldn't say 50%. 58% is battered and bruised. That's a big win for Mayor Lorza.
What do you think? Is that 60% a mandate for him going into the general election?
I think it is. I think anything that's substantially over 50% is an incumbent to begin with. He doesn't have to introduce himself. And you have to spend an awful lot of money to introduce yourself to the electorate.
That certainly is the case as well. And as we're getting some numbers for Providence mayoral race, but super close in that lieutenant governor's race, too close to call. Any final thoughts on this campaign season, Senator? Again, as I think the last time we heard from you, it was clamoring for the governor to debate Matt Brown, which never happened.
I give her credit. It all worked. A big win. And the debate decision paid off. Going negative paid off. All the decisions she made paid off. It's a big win.
And I will say that the progressives in Rhode Island is a nascent group. But look for them to come back and look for some more candidates under that label. I think it's going to happen, and if the lieutenant governorship goes to a progressive, that will make national news, and that'll energize the base in Rhode Island.
Well, we're keeping an eye on that race, and more that you can find on GoLocalProv.com. But I want to thank you guys for joining me this evening here in studio in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, one of GoLocal's first evening broadcasts. And as we can see, folks walking through the city of Providence like to see who's in the window here. So Val Endress with Rhode Island College, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Senator Lincoln Chafee, thank you so much for your time. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with our last set of guests here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.